was on the other side, and he never talked to me. I would have thought that would have been one of the first conversations he had as far as locking us up. So I must have missed those meetings. But anyway, go to your next question.
Well, that was my question. Is there, everything's fine in your caucus?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think we showed up in January of '06 with 46 Republicans who were motivated and excited and ready to be relevant and fight the good fight. I think we did that, and in fact, we're leaving with 47 Republicans.
Heck, when you're down to 38, I'll buy you a steak dinner too, just because I feel sorry for you.
Right. So, I mean, are there issues that come up that are divisive in our own caucus? Yeah, I think silo is an example of one of those. That was one where 17 Republicans voted one way and 30 voted the other. I mean, it was divisive because you have counties like the one I represent who were just extremely opposed, and then you have counties like some of the others represent who were very much in favor of it. I mean, ultimately that comes down to you work through those things, but I think we left 47 strong. At least the caucus we had on Friday night was one of the best ones we had.
I told Julie earlier here that I thought her timing was very appropriate today. You're appearing on the same day that the Register on its editorial page gave you an overall rating of C, as compared with the overall rating of A that you seem to give yourselves. My question relates to one bill, and incidentally, that rating of C is probably superior to what your peers in Congress get. They probably get a D or F overall. But my question relates to the what I think was a bill that was passed by the Senate and not the House, relating to the revision of the Iowa Open Meetings Act. So I thought it had a lot of merit. I thought it should be supported. I think there are many instances where the people are shut out of the opportunity to protest doings and happenings that are occurring across the state, especially with small units of government that don't have the representation that some of the larger ones do. But why was that bill not passed? What did you have against it? What was the opposition to it?
Let's start with you.
First of all, to be fair, I would not give us an A rating. I'd give us an A minus. But with regard to that bill, that's one of the disappointments that I have with regard to the session, is that we were not able to come to consensus. It was really more of a timing issue. Let me just give you, I think it was, I can give or take a few days, about a week and a half before the end of session is when the Senate finally passed over a bill that was not a final product. It was basically the enforcement mechanism, the board, with all the policy language in it. And by the time it came over, it was assigned to a subcommittee. We got it passed out of a subcommittee and went to the full committee. There was virtually no consensus, and we were running out of time. There were several amendments. A minimum of 7 had already been drafted in the committee for the debate. Some wanted to go with the language of the Senate. Some wanted to go in an entirely different direction. Some were disappointed that it didn't look like we could get the votes for passage with all the language the Senate put in it, because it was not a final product when it passed the Senate. And on the day before the last day of session, we were going to schedule a subcommittee meeting. Representative Bill Schickel, who's somebody I respect as a Republican, had already had 7 amendments drafted for the bill. And the timing, given our major requirement of getting the budget done to get out of there, and having yet to do standings bill, the infrastructure budget, both healthcare reform policy conference committee and budget conference committee reports, and I'm leaving some other things. Our IPERS bill, because it was not here, all that was remained on the table with about 24 hours left in session, and it was decided that we're going to wait about, 9 more months and try to roll up our sleeves in the interim to come up with a package that would be available to pass early on in the session. So it would be my hope, and this is something we'll be working on in the interim, is about 9 months from now, we could pass something that could become law with an immediate effective date. But we just weren't able to find consensus at the very end. It just ran out of time, to be frank with you.
I would actually, I would agree with that from the Senate side. I thought overall the bill was a good bill. I fought for putting the legislature under the same bill. I thought the provisions of the bill were good, and I thought the legislature should live under them. I was given the appropriate time to try to make my case to the Iowa Senate and was voted down. But overall, I supported the provisions of the bill. It's a very complex bill, and there was a lot of talk about the pragmatic implications of it and how it would be implemented locally. Because you do set up a commission which would oversee potential violations of the open meetings law. And of course, in the Iowa legislature, we work under an ethics commission, so we're familiar with that particular process. But the law needs to be very, very clear to local officials as to what is expected of them, because you then face some serious consequences if you've violated the provisions of the law. And I think that that does deserve a lot of examination, and I don't begrudge the House at all, from my perspective, in saying we need to take a little bit more time with it.
Yeah, real fast, you offered an amendment to even try to include the legislature in there.
I did, and again, I thought the provisions of the bill were good enough that we should set the example by putting our body under the law. In local government, you are allowed for very specific reasons to go into closed sessions, and you are supposed to list those reasons for the media, and you're supposed to keep to the spirit of the law. So I wanted to continue to allow the legislature to have some privilege to go into closed session as long as everyone was aware of the session, of the closed session and the reason for it. That was not, it was not accepted by the Iowa Senate as a whole. Interestingly enough, on the silo bill in the Senate Ways and Means Committee, Republicans purposely held an open caucus right in front of everybody in the room and discussed the bill and talked about how our votes were going to go. And interestingly enough, everybody kept talking and no one actually listened much, because I don't think they believed what they were seeing. But we, in fact, did sit at the end of the table and, in fact, have a caucus in front of everyone in the committee room, because I think that you can, in fact, find a workable system by which the legislature can be more open. Yet I do respect the fact that there are always times in government that, for a specific reason, you can go into closed session. But I still think that it is a law that the legislature should look at putting aside.
Senator Grunswell?
Excuse me. I think the Senate felt pretty strongly we needed a bill. I would say I think it got caught up with there were a host of other definitional issues. And what I said from the start in this thing was, right now we lack an enforcement mechanism. The current enforcement mechanism is somebody that's big enough, usually a major media player, somebody that's big enough gets mad enough about something that's being kept secret, that they go hire an attorney and they pay the attorney money to go pursue the case. That's what happens now. Ordinary citizens have little access under that scenario without going and paying an attorney. So you either got to be rich or you got to be a giant media corporation. Most small town newspapers wouldn't be able to hire an attorney to go do this. So I think it also got, though, tied up in some of the definitional things, like, okay, what about drafts and what's going to be a draft, and those things aren't easy to define. And I would tell you, when I draft a speech for myself, sometimes I come back later and go, what the heck was I thinking? Gee, I really don't want that in there, and that sends a bad message. Having those kinds of draft lines be so what happened was the issue got caught up not only in the enforcement side of this, but also in some of those definitional sides. And at the very end, we made an attempt to insert this in the last bill in the legislature, just the enforcement mechanism. And by that time, it was probably too late for the House to be able to effectively consider that. So I'd like to see it. I do think we'll move something next year. I do think people will work on it. But it's a tough issue. And from the perspective of local governments, the vast majority of them want to be open, have an open process, want to go through all of that, have open records, have access to open meetings. They had some fear, and I can kind of understand it. They had some fear that this enforcement mechanism would be